Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to OpenGov TV. I've got David Meredith, the CEO of Everbridge, and we're going to be talking about critical event management and the role that Everbridge plays in this space. Great to have you, David. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show today.
Absolutely. David, let me just start off. Unfortunately, the world got hit with this pandemic, the tail end of last year, the early part of this year. And like everybody knows, it began on the Eastern Hemisphere and it's moved itself across to the West. Whereas Everbridge's story is moving the exact opposite direction. Now, you guys started off in the West, you come into the East. Is this by design, coincidence? What's the game plan here from your perspective?
Well, you have to go back to the beginning. So Everbridge was originally founded after 9/11. And our founders saw that when people were going back into the second tower, there wasn't an effective way to communicate with people in the middle of a crisis or a critical event. So the company originally focused on critical communications and became the leader in that space. Then in 2016, we had a very successful initial public offering on the NASDAQ market and broadened our set of capabilities to the full software as a service platform suite that we call Critical Event Management, or CEM. So critical event management is all about, on the one hand, things that you care about. So your people, and for a government, that would be citizens. For a company, it could be employees or customers. Your assets, operations, supply chain, brand, and reputation. So those are all the things that you care about, whether you're a hospital, a corporation, or a government, a federal, state, local government. On the other hand, you have things that can affect those in a negative way. So it could be physical violence, it could be a natural disaster, a storm, or a global pandemic, for example, like COVID-19. And anything that could be a threat, it could also be digital threats like cyber attacks. So when those two intersect, that becomes a critical event. And what we've done is focused all of our energies around everything you need before, during, and after a critical event to protect those things that you care about and keep your organization up and running faster in the time of a crisis. So what we found, to your question, is that countries all over the world are dealing with critical events, and as well as companies. So it's not a question of if you're going to be impacted by a critical event, but when and what type of event, and more importantly, how prepared will you be to deal with that critical event when it does happen. So we're getting pulled into markets all around the world. We are the global leader in this space. We've pioneered it. We've got over 5,300 enterprise corporate customers. We have several countrywide customers where we're helping federal governments power this across their population. Many states, both in the United States and around the world, for example, in India. And then also over 1,500 healthcare organizations, 3,700 first responders around the world. And we're actually starting to put together ecosystems. So for example, I think you're in Singapore today. So we have won the deal to do the Singapore national government for our public warning solution. And then we're starting now to build a whole ecosystem where we're signing more and more customers in Singapore. Same thing in New Zealand, where we power their public warning system. And Australia, we were awarded the right to power their public warning system. So in all these markets, we continue now to add more and more customers and the ability to drive value for everyone in that ecosystem around resiliency and protecting their people and their organizations.
Awesome. So the fact that you're mentioning governments in this part of the world, I'm glad that they are jumping on and really understanding. But what's the real learning? Since you guys have been deploying this since, you said 9/11 was the birth of this. Now, it's almost been 20 years. So what can the government in the East learn from what governments in the West have gone through?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there have been a lot of learnings over the years, and the ability we have to get best practices from all over the world and then apply them other places is really valuable for our customers. So if you look at sort of starting out, it's really critical to have situational awareness. So to that end, we provide 22,000 data feeds in terms of pretty much every piece of information you could possibly imagine. You see behind me our visual command center, which is our single pane of glass that allows you to aggregate and curate all that data to see in real time what's happening and what do you need to respond to. we're able to map all of the assets of a company, including through the supply chain, through their partners, for a country, for a state, for a city. And then when you can map what's happening and how does that affect things that I care about. Once you see that something's happening, we've basically done digital transformation for the crisis management process. So we have pre-designed protocols and workflows that our system in a digital way can manage and orchestrate across a variety of different stakeholders. So we have a whole crisis management suite of capabilities that manages all that for a government or for a company or for a healthcare organization. And then we have over 100 different communication modalities. So we can orchestrate and communicate to everybody and get messages to them in real time. So for example, now with COVID, many local governments, they have special needs groups. There may be elderly or people that have special needs around, they need oxygen, and having the ability to get targeted messages by segment, letting them know what's the latest information. If it's a company, the companies want to know, are there other ancillary effects of the pandemic, like travel impacts or production stoppages, and they're able to reroute their supply chains accordingly. So really it's managing that whole end-to-end process. And there's a lot of learnings around, how do I segment my communications? How can I be targeted? Because when you're, for example, one very well documented success is when Cyclone Fani hit Odisha in India. So Odisha is a state that's using our public warning as well as our crisis management capabilities. When you've got to evacuate large numbers of people, millions of people in a short period of time, the more targeted you can be in terms of getting people out the right way and having that intelligence and being able to give them very targeted instructions is really valuable. And we're seeing that now with the wildfires in California. We do the entire state of California, as well as 8 of the 10 biggest cities like LA. And so we're able to tell exactly the right people to evacuate so we don't flood the roads with other people that might just bog everybody down.
That's awesome. That's an incredible example you're talking about. So if Odisha has taken that up, why are other governments not learning from these guys and deploying such solutions? Because we're still seeing governments in the region be quite reactionary, and this is the time to react. But I'm still seeing a very slow uptake. Why do you think that is the case?
Well, we're seeing an acceleration in that. I think the awareness level has come up. So Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, has publicly said that many organizations were not prepared for the pandemic. So I think now people are more aware. Every prime minister, president, mayor, governor, CEO, and board, this is their number one priority right now is, how do we reopen our economies? How do we get people back to work? Even for hospitals, they're losing $5 million a day in elective surgeries. How do we get people comfortable to come back in and do those surgeries, knowing that they're going to be safe? So, it's a very tough problem, and it's a problem that, like many other ones, we can use technology to try to mitigate the risk and help work through that issue. So we are seeing now from a public warning perspective where we do entire countrywide deals. We've got 3 countries in Asia Pac. We've got countries in every region of the world now using our capabilities, Middle East, Africa, several countries in Europe, Latin America, and we're working with 49 of 50 states and 6 statewide deals in the US and probably half a dozen states in India. So we're seeing the adoption starting to ramp up. I agree with you, it needs to happen faster. And that's part of why we're trying to get the word out and trying to share best practices. A great example is Norway. So we've announced recently, we're helping the Ministry of Health for Norway around COVID, and they're able to send messages to their entire population and everyone visiting in Norway, giving them specific instructions around coronavirus. And that's over 5 million messages, no network congestion at all. And then they're able to define different areas around social distancing and get messages out to people and let them know when it's too densely populated as a way to help reinforce social distancing. But doing all of this while absolutely maintaining and respecting privacy of individuals. So everything anonymous, no personal information, no PII. So it is possible to respect privacy, which we're very big on, while also helping to protect people from COVID and manage that at the countrywide level. So if you look at some of the countries who are customers like Norway, Iceland, New Zealand, for a variety of reasons, these are some of the countries that have some of the best metrics on managing the risk of COVID, whether it be hospitalizations, mortality, total cases. And we like to think at some level, like what Norway is doing is really helping them to manage that.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, that just makes sense. So let me broaden this a little bit because you mentioned it's not only about citizens, it's also about employees. So let's talk about the enterprise space a little. Are companies doing enough, or can they be doing more? In a systematic way.
Well, yeah, it's something, like I said, when everything is going great, people don't think about it. They don't necessarily want to put the investment into it. Now it's a higher priority. And so we are working with many of the biggest brands, the Fortune 500, and they've been going public with the fact that they're standardizing on a critical event management suite to help them manage this. So Goldman Sachs, for example, we work with many of the tech giants, 8 of the 10 banks, and top retailers like Lowe's or Tiffany's. So just the leaders across multiple industry verticals now adopting this. And I think more and more it's becoming the standard. So for an organization right now, we're getting a lot of demand around help us return our people to the office, return to work. From governments, help us get our people back safely to public spaces so we can reopen the economies faster. And there are ways to do that. So we have a set of capabilities, including contact tracing, that we're using to help manage that. And we think we've got a very differentiated approach on contact tracing, where we're able to leverage our 225 pre-existing integrations for corporate customers, for example. So when you come into the office and the thermal scanner is taking your temperature, that's already integrated with our CEM platform. We're integrated with the physical access controls, the calendaring systems, integrated with the travel itineraries. So we're able to help the companies keep track. So, and we've got a mobile app where you can do opt-in based wellness checks. So whether you're getting scanned at the front door or you're doing the wellness check and say you're not feeling well, you're symptomatic, right away we can know within minutes everyone at work that you've been exposed to within the period where you may have gotten sick. And that allows you to control it much better and provide a much safer environment to bring employees back to the office. And we're seeing tremendous demand for all of those return to work suite of solutions, including contact tracing right now.